Hey, this is Warren Redlick. There was a great Twitter Spaces yesterday with Elon Musk. I want to go through this Twitter Spaces and I want to brag that I got some things, really big things right, and some Barry Glack people and Gerber Ross people got some really things wrong. Some gotcha moments here. Are you ready? Let's go.
Oh, yeah, here we go. Gary versus Elon.
No, we're not doing that.
Just notice that right there. Omar invited Gary to have Gary versus Elon, and Gary said, no, we're not doing that. Now, Gary later claimed that he didn't get an opportunity to ask Elon a question, that he raised his hand and he wasn't called upon. And what you're going to see over the course of this Twitter space is that people just jumped in. There was no hand raising etiquette. Gary didn't jump in. Gary waited until after. I'm not going to cover that in this video, but Gary waited after Elon was gone to talk badly about Elon. He didn't have the balls to confront Elon. Like Ross Gerber, I'll give Ross credit. Ross spoke directly to Elon and got a response. Earl LaFrunk Puppy, spoke directly to Elon, got a response. Gary didn't have the courage to ask Elon a question directly in front of a room full of people. Just like Gary is afraid to have a conversation with me because he can't handle somebody who's actually going to confront him on his lies.
We want to get sense of your thought process for growth rates and how do you overall contextualize it or conceptualize it from Tesla standpoint for unit growth. You probably have your pulse on the entire global macroeconomic aspects as well as demand for your product, right? So yeah. One aspect was that what we were discussing, and Elon, the second aspect was on Twitter side. It seems like you have kind of gotten to a good grip of the situation. What's your next step? So those are things which we were bouncing around our ideas on.
So basically, we're going to start out with Elon's opening remarks. There was a poorly worded question that sort of meandered around, and the end result is Elon answered the question sort of, but basically gave what I think was a great explanation of how things are looking so far.
On the Twitter front, I need to sort of deep dive on Twitter just to make sure the company didn't go bankrupt next year. So that was really, just required, about a month of intense work. As I was still doing Tesla work during that time as well, by the way. And I think it's really, Tesla has not skipped a beat on execution. The Tesla team is doing an incredible job across the board in execution. So it's really, can't say enough good things about the Tesla team and the progress that's being made in terms of fundamentals.
So the start there is that Elon basically put a month in of serious work at Twitter. He still continued to work on Tesla. Tesla's continuing to execute well. The Tesla team's doing great. The idea that Elon was distracted from Tesla and didn't do his work at Tesla is false, and you're going to hear more of that later in this conversation, in this video. Overall, things are going really well, and you're going to hear also later that Elon expects to continue working less hard at Twitter over another month or so, and then we'll be doing a lot less at Twitter a month after that. That he's trying to get Twitter stable, avoid bankruptcy, get things going, but you'll hear all that, so let's keep going.
I just do want to really emphasize, and I'm not trying to say that this is the only reason, but it is certainly the primary reason, is that when interest rates increase, the cost of a car increases along with it. So the radical interest rate changes that have occurred have increased the prices of all cars, actually new and used. You can see like what a bath Carvana and CarMax are taking. This will be true of anything bought with debt. So that's on the demand side.
This is a rebuttal of Gary Black's claim that interest rates aren't having a significant impact on demand. This is Elon's position, and Gary does not speak up at any point to defend his position. He will do it on Twitter, and he'll do it after Elon's out of the space. But he doesn't say anything now. Elon makes, I think, a fairly convincing point that when interest rates go up, car payments go up. Anybody can shop for a car loan, go on all kinds of websites and shop for car loans. Raise the interest rates 3 percentage points and see what happens to your car payment. It goes up. Same thing with buying a house.
The interest rate changes by the Fed, and then everyone's basically forced to follow the Fed. You've got Europe raising interest rates, even Japan raising interest rates. And in my view, I've said a bunch of this already on Twitter. In my view, we are already in deflation, and the Fed is just dealing with old data. If I'm correct that we're already in deflation, the real rate of return of T-bills is insanely high. It's arguably above the long-term rate of the S&P 500. It's arguably above 6% real rate of return on a T-bill right now. So you got two things that you get a double whammy if you're selling a product that is bought almost entirely with debt, like a car.
I just want to note that Gary's microphone is not muted. Gary can speak anytime he wants to. He doesn't speak. He left his microphone unmuted.
Approaching or so potentially exceeding the risky rate of the S&P 500. And that's why you're seeing a lot of pretty smart fund managers out there shorting the S&P 500.
The larger point from Elon is that on the one hand, you've got interest rates going up, making it harder to buy a car, more expensive to buy a car. On the other hand, as an investor, the sophisticated investment managers are saying, why would I buy the S&P 500? Why would I buy stocks for my portfolio when I can buy this risk-free rate of return of 6% on treasury bills or whatever the treasury bill rate is? There's this pressure on stock prices because big-time investors are selling stocks and buying bonds.
Do you really feel, we've talked about the 50% growth rate, and I find that to be really an arbitrary number, whether it's 40 or 45.
Yeah.
Do you really think Tesla is going to sustain that growth rate in the next couple of years still?
This is my best guess at the future. It's not like I have some incredible crystal ball that is an exact predictor of anything. So with all appropriate caveats, if we are in a recession, I think we are in a recession, and I think 2023 is going to be quite a serious recession. And it's going to be, in my opinion, comparable to 2009. I don't know if it's going to be a little worse or a little better, but I think it's in my view likely to be comparable. That means demand for any kind of optional discretionary item, especially if it's a big ticket item, will be lower. And then with the Fed increasing rates, which is really, this is quite unusual. This is like when you're heading to a recession, you should be reducing the Fed rate, not increasing it. So that amplifies the difficulty. So now you have sort of structural demand, which is obviously going to be lower in a recession, and you amplified the effective cost of a car because they're almost all bought with debt. So you get a double whammy, is what I'm saying. Then the obvious choice in that scenario is: do you want to grow unit volume, in which case you'll have to adjust prices downward, or do you want to grow at a lower rate or go steady? It's sort of a choice there. My inclination would be to still grow. My bias would be to say okay, let's grow as fast as we can without putting the company at risk, which would mean, in that scenario, profits would be low to negative during a recession, provided the cash position is okay. I think that's still the right move long term.
Troy Teslike has been saying that Tesla is going to reduce production because there's a lack of demand. Gary Black and Ross Gerber have been saying similar. And Elon is saying, no, we're going to produce at full volume as much as we can. We will take lower profits. We'll even take zero profits or even potentially slightly negative profits as long as our cash position is strong. Tesla is going, my phrasing, balls to the wall. They're going to produce as many vehicles as they can. So for people who are saying that Tesla's going to reduce production because demand isn't there, Tesla's going to produce in really, really high volume. And you need to understand something here. Number one, Tesla has about 30% gross margin on its cars. So Tesla can drop prices 25% and still make a reasonable profit. Number two, the Inflation Reduction Act is going to lower the price of Tesla vehicles. So take a $50,000 Tesla. You're going to get $7,500 tax credit. So that's a 15% price reduction right there for the buyer. Now, on top of that, Tesla, so now the $50,000 car is $42,500 to the buyer. Now, Tesla can do a 15% price reduction and bring the car down to $42,500. And then you get the tax credit, another $7,500, and you're paying $35,000 for a $50,000 car. And nobody else can do either of those with a gas car because you don't get the EV tax credit with a gas car, and they don't have the margins to be able to reduce the price that much. So Tesla would still be making a 15% gross margin by dropping the price of a $50,000 Model 3 to $35,000. That's a huge lever to be able to increase demand or generate enough demand to sell as many cars as they need to sell. That's what they could do if they have to, if there isn't enough demand to buy their cars. Now, in China, they don't have the tax credit. In Europe, they don't have the tax credit, but they still have this 30% margin to be able to reduce prices by, let's say, 20% if they need to. And they'll still be able to make a 10% profit, where the gas car companies, their margins are so small and the other EV makers are losing money on each car that they can't do this. So Tesla is going to grab a massive amount of market share. And there's two key points here. One, they're going to grab a massive amount of market share because that's what Silicon Valley companies do. They grab as much market share as they can when they can, as long as it doesn't destroy the company. And number two, having more cars on the road generates more data for FSD beta, for FSD to get better, to generate. And you're going to hear him talk about this a little later in the space. Not about more cars generates more data, but Tesla is getting close to solving full self-driving, to getting to the point where they can do robo-taxis, and getting close to solving real-world artificial intelligence. And no one's close. And the more data you generate, the better you're going to get at it. And the more compute you have, and they've got 14,000 GPUs from NVIDIA, and they've got Dojo coming online, you combine a lot of computing power with a lot of data, and you're going to solve this problem quicker. So Tesla wants as many cars on the road as possible to generate as much data as possible to help solve this real-world AI problem, this self-driving problem, this robo-taxi problem.
There's also something that Tesla possesses that other car companies do not, which is extremely fundamental. That is that the cars are upgradable to autonomy. And arguably, an autonomous car is worth many times what a non-autonomous car is.
Just really quick on the value of an autonomous car versus a non-autonomous car. Typical car is driven 2 hours a day and sits in a garage 22 hours a day, or sits in a parking slot somewhere 22 hours a day. A self-driving car might drive 16 hours a day or even 18 hours a day. I would say from 6 a.m. to midnight would be a typical robo-taxi day. That's 18 hours. But call it 16 hours. That's 8 times as much driving as a gasoline car. Now you combine it with an electric vehicle which lasts 1 million miles versus 150,000 miles, and you see the same thing. It's like a 7x. A Tesla becomes worth so much more than a regular car once full self-driving, once robo-taxi's unlocked.
So even if your margins are extremely low in selling the car, the subsequent upgrade to it being autonomous is worth a lot.
The idea is we get as many cars out on the road as possible, because down the road, people are going to upgrade to full self-driving, and we're going to generate massive profits later from that move. If you don't get the cars on the road, there's less cars out there to upgrade to full self-driving when that moment comes. So you want to produce as many cars as possible. You generate more FSD buys later when it becomes that good. You generate more robo-taxi data, more FSD data to improve it. There's so many reasons to produce as many cars as possible. And I'm going to brag about this. This is what I called. I said this. I've been saying this. Other people have been saying, no, Tesla's going to pull back on production. They don't understand Tesla. Gary doesn't understand Tesla. Ross doesn't understand Tesla. I love Troy, but he got this wrong.
And that's something that no other car company can do. Only Tesla can do that.
Here, I'll speak for George Hotz for a second and Comma.ai. Comma's position is we're going to solve self-driving, and you'll be able to add our Comma device onto your car, and it'll upgrade your car to self-driving. But that's not completely true. The Comma device doesn't have as many cameras. There's a whole bunch of reasons why Comma is down the road a ways, and George left Comma, signaling maybe Comma's not doing that well. So far from clear, but nobody else other than Comma even has a claim that they can upgrade a car. And the Comma approach doesn't give profits to the car company that's making the cars. That gives the profits to Comma. So that doesn't really give the car companies an advantage. It only gives Comma an advantage.
I stand by my prediction that long term, that Tesla will be the most valuable company in the world.
Now, Elon has said this. Let's just put this in context. Tesla is currently trading at $400 billion market cap, roughly. The most valuable company in the world, 5 years from now, I think he's going to say, is $4 trillion, let's say. So he's predicting a 10x in 5 years. He's basically predicting a 10x in 5 years. And you guys know I'm a toxic Elon fanboy. I believe him.
I'm actually fairly confident that will be what happens. What I cannot predict, because there are many things outside of my control, is what will be the valuation along the way there. So that is subject to a lot of emotional elements on the stock market, subject to the macroeconomic conditions. But if say like long term, I would say Tesla's probably, in my best guess, most valuable company in the world in less than 5 years.
Less than 5 years. And notice, again, I've been saying this, I can't make short-term stock price predictions. Elon is saying he can't make short-term stock price predictions. People who tell you they can make short-term stock price predictions are telling you they're smarter than Elon. They can be smarter than me. Are they smarter than Elon? Don't fall for people who tell you they can make short-term stock price predictions. It's not, we can't control, there's too many factors, there are too many things going on. There's all this emotion. There's so many reasons why the stock market is, some people call it a random walk, but long-term stocks tend to go with the fundamentals. And what Elon is saying is the fundamentals of Tesla will drive a much higher valuation in less than 5 years.
Well, yeah, I think I definitely agree with Elon. I've been using the FSD Beta. It's been driving me all around LA with no takeovers. But, just to give voice to a lot of people, Elon, you've blamed sort of the macro environment. I think a lot of people don't understand the economy. But what would you say to people who say that, Elon bought Twitter and he had to sell his shares and he hasn't been doing anything at Tesla? He hasn't been doing his job. He's turning people off with his political tweets. They're all canceling their Tesla orders. And this is all his fault, and he won't acknowledge it. He's just blaming it on macro.
So I love the question from Omar. Omar Kazi is Holmar's catalog, Holmar's blog. What you're going to see here is Elon partially answers the question, and then I think somebody interrupts him and goes to a different question. So we never get a full answer to the question. This is the thing. Elon tends to speak slowly and he tends to pause, and the pauses open up for jerks like me who will jump in at any opportunity. It wasn't me. I didn't do it this time. But it's kind of frustrating when you're listening to this Twitter space that people are cutting off the guy we should probably listen to.
If you look at sort of automotive demand, almost anywhere in the world, it's problematic almost anywhere in the world, and not everywhere cares about my political comments.
And I'm going to say I told you so again. That's something I've been saying, that the percentage, first of all, about a third of Tesla sales are in the U.S., a third are in China, and a third are in Europe, or in that ballpark, a third in Asia, a third in North America, a third in Europe. And, maybe 5% of Americans are that motivated. That you've got 33% Democrats, 33% Independent, 33% Republican. Maybe some chunk of the Democrats are that motivated they're not going to buy a Tesla. It's not all Democrats. The ones who are watching the Kardashians, the ones who are watching football, the ones who are watching basketball, that they're focused on that. They're not watching this stuff. So 5% of 33%, you're basically talking about 1% of Tesla's demand. There's no one in China who's not buying a Tesla because of Elon's tweets. Because you can't see Twitter in China, among other things. And, the idea that Europeans are sitting there like getting angry about Elon picking on, wokeism in America or getting in fights with Joe Biden, they don't care. You'll see people on Twitter saying it, but really, do you think there's like people in Norway who are upset about Elon's tweets? By the way, Model Y is the best-selling car in Norway. I don't think so.
So that I think this is really of minor impact. I really just don't think this is a significant factor. The thing that I think most people are just not realizing is just how, I sound like a broken record on this, but how big of an impact a Fed rate level is of this, on the order of 5%, is if we are in a deflationary environment, which I think we are in.
In autos, we are in a deflationary environment. 100% agree
Objectively,
with you.
we are.
And
So you notice we didn't get a full answer to Omar's question. All of a sudden, we're going off to some other topic, which I find frustrating. I thought Omar asked a really good question, and we didn't get a full answer to his question because everybody's got their own thing. So Stock Talk or whatever is going to go off on a Twitter question.
Why is it that you feel, I guess, at this juncture, that you can't delegate, a handful of talent that you trust, who share your vision, to run the Twitter side while you focus on some of the bigger things elsewhere?
I mean, as I said at the beginning of the call, I had to have a sort of a short-term, month or so of just getting the insane Twitter costs under control. Twitter would just go flat bankrupt. And now that is basically almost entirely done. And then I've got to make sure that the engine of engineering at Twitter is working. Otherwise, Twitter cannot develop new features. But in the grand scheme of things, the amount of actual cognitive load that Twitter represents is low. I mean, it is a much simpler problem than Tesla or SpaceX, obviously, by a country mile. But I would say it was like high cognitive load for about a month. At this point, it is a moderate cognitive load. A month from now, it'll be I think low. And if I look back and say, like, okay, what are actions that could have been taken? What was there something that I failed to do at Tesla that could have been done and would have improved our execution? I literally cannot think of a single thing.
To rebut the stories that have been told are that Elon's busy at Twitter and he's not taking care of things at Tesla, and Elon is saying no, everything got taken care of at Tesla. Later, he says he didn't miss a single important meeting. You know, the idea that he was absent from Tesla is just a total lie. This is a Gary Black, Ross Gerber lie that they've been telling, and other people have been telling this lie. And if you repeat a lie long enough, people start to believe it. That's a Goebbels theory of propaganda. There was no reason to ever think, you know, Elon showed up to the Tesla Semi event. It's very clear that Elon is paying attention. He said that he's been paying attention to what's going on at Tesla. Tesla's been doing great. And in terms of execution, Tesla's been doing great. And these guys are talking about, well, all these people are saying that you're not paying attention to Tesla. It's like, no, you're saying he's not paying attention to Tesla. And you guys keep repeating the story, and then people start saying it because you keep saying it. They're the problem. And not that it's a huge problem, because Tesla's doing well. But the stock, if you're wondering why the stock price is being driven down, it's because two people with very large audiences have been telling people that Elon's not doing his job at Tesla. And those two people are Gary Black and Ross Gerber. And there's plenty of others.
Elon, can you talk about the issues in China and outlook on SAR? I know, you know, Tesla's been able to sell and increase penetration and market share in EVs for many years. But, you know, now that it's at a larger scale, you know, global auto SAR was at 66.7 million units in 2021. US SAR is at 14.1 million. Outlooks for next year in the US and overseas are on the decline. And prices are also declining. Like you said, I agree, we're in an auto deflationary environment when it comes to prices.
Yeah. Yes, objectively so.
When it comes to unit sales, can Tesla continue to increase unit sales in this type of environment? Or will it have to provide more incentives? Or, you know, how are you planning to, you know, this macroeconomic environment is pretty challenging. How do you plan to address some of these, you know, these issues that are outside of your control?
So Elon already addressed this. He says we're going to sell as many cars as we can, and if we have to sell at low or zero profit or even worse, as long as it doesn't threaten the cash position of the company, we will do so. So Elon kind of already answered this question. We will lower prices a lot if we have to, but he's going to answer it again.
I'm just hoping, like, factually, if you know, since the vast majority of cars are bought on credit, the interest rates are a high interest rate, high real interest rate is literally just like increasing the price of the car. So in order to keep demand constant, you would have to therefore decrease the price of the car. It's the only that's if you want to keep demand constant, and if you want to increase demand, you have to decrease the price of the car further. This is just this is like Econ 101 stuff. So that's the situation we have. It's kind of blown my mind that the Fed has raised rates so high. They're just dealing with old information. Basically, like, the economy right now is like a car, you know, driving around on a cliffside road, and the Fed is driving it by looking out the rear view mirror. In fact, it's not even looking at the rear view mirror. It's looking at a video taken out of the rear view mirror that's like 3 months old. So obviously, this is not a good way to drive a car on a windy cliff road. They're just very old school and traditional. I think we're in for a hard landing. If you have a risk-free rate like that is higher than the return on the S&P, which obviously has fluctuations, why would anyone have stock?
I mean, we're buying bonds. We're buying preferreds. We're, you know, at 11, 12% yields.
Now, notice this is one of the things. Elon didn't really answer the question. He'd already answered that question before. Elon went back to talking about interest rates and the impact on the economy. So he didn't really, but remember, he did answer this question before. They're going to make as many cars as they can. They'll discount as much as they have to in order to sell as many cars as they can, as long as it doesn't endanger the company or the company's cash position.
You can buy the T-Flow. Everyone on here, there's ETFs, they're floating rate instruments. You can easily earn, high single digits, double digit return in very low risk securities today. So I 100% agree with you. Why would you buy residual interest equity securities in risky companies? I 100% agree with your thought process. In an environment like this, now we don't expect rates to stay here forever, but it's a good question everyone should ask themselves.
Exactly. And so like probably what's going to happen, it sounds like based on the Fed signaling, is they'll increase rates by another 50 basis points next month. And again, I felt like I have a hotline to Jerome Powell. If somebody knows Jerome Powell, please tell him to stop raising interest rates. It was insane.
I feel like you could get him on the phone if you really wanted to.
I think so.
At this point.
Is he allowed to talk to me?
Sure.
Well, I'm pretty sure he's allowed to talk to you.
Talk to business leaders, totally.
Let's get this set up. Let's do it on Twitter Spaces. That would be a conversation.
That'd be sick.
Elon versus the Fed on Twitter.
Twitter's valuation would pop on that too, right? You'd get a whole new batch of listeners.
Well, it's the whole market, But like I said, the thing to appreciate about interest rate increases is the double whammy effect of, if you're looking at a stock price, is higher interest rates will reduce the profitability of any company selling something that is dependent on the price of debt. Because cars are bought with leases and loans. People look at their monthly payment. And so you have basically a demand/profitability issue with higher interest rates, and then which then reduces profitability, obviously. And then in general, the valuation of all equities drops with the increase in the real interest rate. That's the double whammy effect that I'm talking about.
This is one of those frustrating things when you see an interview, if you can call this an interview with Elon, is when Elon will tend to talk about the same thing over and over again. He has a tendency to he gets on certain tracks, and it's hard. I think it's hard to get him to go on a different track. I think Lex Friedman is really good at this. I think Joe Rogan is pretty good at this, of getting him to talk about something other than what you just said 15 minutes ago or 5 minutes ago. We really, he was on a path to talking about something meaningful, and he got derailed by somebody asking a question that he'd already answered. And then he goes on a different answer, which he'd already answered as well. It's one of those frustrating. I really believe, I would love to interview Elon. I think Rob Maurer would do a great job interviewing Elon. I think Dave Lee would do a great job interviewing Elon. Stephen Mark Ryan would do a great job interviewing Elon. And that would be a different interview than a lot of the interviews we've seen so far. But, it's probably not going to happen.
This will not last forever. I don't know. Hopefully they'll see okay, they've gone too far, and then start lowering the rate. And then it's a question of, well, at what rate do they lower the rate? How long does it take them to get the rate back to something sensible?
Elon, on that point you made earlier about, the raising, the higher rates, obviously making cars effectively more expensive. I agree with that. Obviously, it's a pretty basic notion, but
note that it's a pretty basic notion, but Gary Black disagreed with it. In the past, he's disagreed with it. I think he disagrees with it again, not in this video, but I believe he disagreed with it later as well.
I'm just curious, and we've talked about this before, and I know Gary has mentioned this before. What's your view on Tesla's path to the $30,000 vehicle or the next vehicle? I know you said that you guys had kind of tabled that last time you spoke about it. Have you guys brought that back up? Is it something you're considering again now, especially in this environment? I'm just curious.
So that is not true that Tesla tabled the $30,000 car. Tesla's never talked about a $30,000 car. What they talked about in the Q3 investor call, and what Martin Viecha mentioned before the Q3 investor call, I think it was before, is that they're working on a robo-taxi platform vehicle. They didn't call it the $30,000 car. They said the cost to make the car would be about half, or the effort to make the car would be about half of what it takes to make a Model 3 or Model Y. So if they're able to sell a Model 3, it looks like now, for less than $40,000, then that robo-taxi platform vehicle might be a $20,000 car. So why people think it's a $30,000 car, it might be a $20,000 car.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is not the forum to make product announcements. We're obviously want to make more affordable cars. And the Tesla product pipeline is awesome. I think Tesla's got the most exciting product roadmap of any company on earth by far.
See, people don't pick up on that. Tesla has the most exciting product line roadmap of any company on earth. Now, what we know about is Cybertruck is coming. We know that this robotaxi platform vehicle is coming. There's a decent chance that Roadster is coming. We've got Megapack. The new Megapack is already starting to go out there. You got Powerwalls and solar. You've got Bot, which is down the road. Makes you kind of wonder, though, is there something else he's not telling us? Is there some other product that he hasn't mentioned that's coming? I mean, I don't think Dojo counts as a product, but maybe Dojo as a service. A van. Is there something else you're not telling us, Elon? I would have loved to, but he said they're not revealing their product roadmap. I know I've talked to people at Tesla. They're not making a single passenger electric vehicle, but what's their exciting product roadmap? Be curious to hear that. I don't think we're going to find that. That's going to trickle out over time, though.
And the proof will be in the pudding.
Just connecting some of the previous points together, when I looked at the 08, 09 inflation recession, in 07 in U.S. auto sales were at 16.5 million cars. 08 it went down to 13.1, and then 09 it went down to 10.4. So if you go from 07 to 09, there was like a 36% drawdown in U.S. I'm just looking at U.S. auto sales. And then you look at what Tesla is projected to do this year in the U.S. in terms of EV as a percent of auto. It's going to grow 50% this year, go from 4.7% penetration of total auto to 7%, which is like a 50% jump in the U.S. And it's going to do about a 100% jump in China year over year. So these are unbelievable growth numbers of EV as a percent of auto. And the thing I don't think we've layered in is that Tesla has increased prices, even with this inventory reduction in the last couple of days. Like the Model Y, I think, is still $19,000 higher than it was in the early part of Q4 2021. So long story short, if you overlay Tesla's EV adoption growth and you overlay what happened in the last recession, which was pretty gnarly, it feels like in the fact that prices have gone up so much and commodities have come down so much over the last, I won't say so much, but commodities are starting to come down. How do you feel Tesla's positioned with all those factors in mind?
So just to be clear, Jeff is a bull like me. He's not a fake bull. He's not a half bull. He's all in. He's a big believer. I've seen Jeff talking before. Jeff's in my mind, one of the good guys. He's not a fake bull.
I think Tesla's positioned better than any other car company by far. The fact that the vehicle is capable of autonomy with a software update is gigantic. No one else has that. And we also, are starting from a position where gross margins are higher than I think anyone else, which gives us more room to lower them and maintain or increase demand. Now, does that mean that profits are a pretty picture in like a 2009 style recession? Of course not. That's just not physically possible. There's no human on earth or me or anyone else who could change that.
So he's basically saying, look, if we have a really bad recession, our profits are going to decline. Okay, which is reasonable. And I want to mention later in the video, Chuck Cook asked a great question about FSD Beta that towards the end of this video. That's really worth staying around for. So stick around and also check out the t-shirts at elonbits.com. Please support me on the Locals platform on Patreon as a YouTube channel member. But let's get back to Elon.
We're on Twitter Spaces right now. Is Twitter Spaces something that's kind of core to you and Twitter and the long term of it? Is it important to you?
I think is a great forum for the public in general, and I think it's quite useful to get the message out. Obviously, but basically being on Twitter Space and then being able to sort of see the Twitter comments, the written comments at the same time, I think is Twitter at its best.
So that's not really much, of a meaningful question. Yes, Elon likes Twitter Spaces. I didn't get much more out of it than that.
We've got Ross Gerber in the room, and Ross has been saying Elon's doing a shitty job. He's not there, and he wants to run for the board of directors. Ross, would you like to confront Elon right now while we're in this space?
I love the way Omar did that, and it is true that Ross has been very, very critical of Elon. Now watch Ross try to downplay the fact that he said that Tesla needs a new CEO and that the board of directors is doing a terrible job. He didn't really say Elon was doing a shitty job. He kind of said Elon's not doing the job. And he said the board of directors is doing a shitty job. And Ross is going to try to back out of it and try to kiss Elon's ass.
That's not what I've been saying at all. I'm probably one of the biggest fans of Elon of anybody here. And I'm super grateful for the effort and success that he's put into making Tesla successful and SpaceX. And all I want to know is what's going on. And that's all I've asked from the Tesla board too, is like, I just want to back at Tesla. I just miss you, Elon, and I support it 100%. And I've invested in it, and I would invest more. But I just I really think there's a huge community of people who just want to know, like, what's the next move? Like, how long is this going to be? Like, how much more stock are you going to sell? These are basic questions that I think are fair to ask.
So again, Ross is massively underplaying how massively negative he's been about Elon and the Tesla board of directors. But he did ask a couple of good questions, and you're going to get a really good answer to one of those questions right now.
Yeah, I'm not selling any stock for, I don't know, I'd call it a minimum 18 to 24 months. So you can count on me like no stock sales till probably, I don't know, 2025 or something. You know, I need to sort of sell some stock just to make sure like there's like powder dry account for a worst case scenario.
Totally.
Yeah.
I
and
get
so
all
that's really it. Yeah.
But I want to buy
but I'm not selling any yeah.
It's like, I just don't want to get whacked the next day. You know what I mean?
I usually have my commitment that I won't sell stock until, I don't know, probably 2 years from now. Definitely not next year under any circumstances. You know, probably not the year thereafter. So I just really want to make sure that I'm somewhat paranoid, having gone through 2 really intense recessions.
I totally understand that.
So just to be clear, what Elon committed to was he's not going to sell any stock in 2023 and probably not in 2024, but definitely not in 2024. Sounds like he doesn't plan on selling until 2025, but the real commitment was not selling stock in 2023. And Ross keeps interrupting him instead of letting him finish.
Can you answer my other question though? Like, as far as what you're thinking as a timeline, as far as like when you're going to be back in Austin?
So this is partly because Ross wasn't in the space earlier when Elon said that he's been working on Tesla all along. But Elon gives a good answer here.
I was back in Austin just last week, but you know, Tesla's still primarily in the Bay Area, and I'm in the Bay Area.
Right.
I hadn't like literally. There's not a single important Tesla meeting that I've missed this entire time. So it's not like, you know, I'm totally missing in action. That's just not the case.
I agree, but maybe it's the opposite.
To be clear here, Ross has been arguing, and Gary, they've been arguing that Elon should be on the factory floor getting the $30,000 car up and running, getting the Cybertruck up and running. So Ross is downplaying the things he's said before, just to be clear.
Optics a little bit. That's kind of where I'm coming from.
Ross is going to optics.
Sure.
It's like an optics thing, and like a lot of things you're doing on Twitter, I'm like super like it needed to be done. Like, you know how I feel about the people who are running Twitter before, and I think you're doing a great job with the product. Not to mention too, although it's not an easy task by any means. But I just think the perception is like, oh, he's doing this now and he's not doing that, and maybe the media is doing that.
No, it's not the media doing that. It's Ross doing that. It's Ross and Gary doing that, and they're blaming the media for Ross going on the media and telling the media that.
But it's just something you should be aware of, and that perception is a reality to a lot of people.
I don't even know how ridiculous it is for Ross to say it's Elon's fault that Ross has been misstating the facts about Elon's time and Elon's effort at Tesla. I've been saying the wrong things about you all this time, and that's your fault. It's total nonsense, Ross. Gary, the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, Twitter is obviously like mega catnip. If you cross catnip with crack, that's what Twitter is. A catnip crack. So like any tiny little thing of Twitter is like front page news. Right. You know, it's like we have like some mid-level person left Twitter front page news. Right. Like what the. It was ridiculous. So it's just going to get like outsized attention. But it's not like there's literally, if I think like, is there anything that I could have done in the past like few months that would have helped with Tesla's execution? I literally can't think of anything.
Right.
Now, when Elon's not around, Ross and Gary will say, well, Elon should be accelerating the $30,000 car. Elon should be accelerating the Cybertruck. And Ross is not confronting him on that. If he did, Elon's answer would be, because he's answered this before, we don't have the battery supply to do another vehicle yet. We're getting there, but we're making enough batteries to make the Model Ys, and we're getting enough batteries to make the Megapacks and the Powerwalls, but they aren't generating enough batteries. They don't have enough batteries to make a new vehicle, and Ross didn't go there.
And there was not a single important meeting that I missed. We're making great progress on future product development. It's really just like, I think, there's going to be some macro drama that's higher than people currently think, or higher than most people think. It's hard to predict exactly. Economic prognostication is fraught with difficulty. If we do have another 2009 situation, that's the stock prices of everything is going to be lower, and then I think it's arguable that stock prices of anything that's bought with debt will like not a staple, like it's sort of it's like buying sort of food at the grocery store, people will still buy that, but things that are bought with debt, like basically housing and cars are going to be the two biggest,
Right.
Are really going to just get disproportionately impacted. So that's why I was trying to emphasize, but from a long-term standpoint, there's a natural economic cycle that happens, and frankly, we're overdue for a recession. It's shocking that we haven't had a serious recession since, recession in any meaningful sense of the word, since 2009. That's 13 years. Wow. So this is economic cycles are just the way the economy works. You have up and down cycles, and it's just the way things go. But we're somewhat overdue for that. I was talking to Brett Johnson, who's the CFO of SpaceX, and he was telling me about when he was at Broadcom in 2000. And Broadcom was Broadcom's a good company making good products. It's not like Pets.com. I was like, yeah, it's pretty wild how when there's when there's panic in the stock market, how much even high quality company stocks can drop. And he was like, yeah, when he was at Broadcom, the stock dropped 97%. I was like, wow, that's a lot. That subsequently recovered to, I think, above, its previous all-time high. But, when there's extreme panic in the markets, things can go to ridiculous levels. I'm not saying that they will, but this is a thing that has happened in the past.
So Elon is laying out a point that Ross and Gary have ignored, which is when you have chaos in the macroeconomic situation and it leads to chaos in the stock market, crazy results happen and highly valued companies can lose a lot of stock value, even when everything's going well, as he describes at Broadcom. That's why I've been very much encouraging people to avoid buying stock on margin, and just avoid margin debt, because you just don't know if there's going to be some panicky situation in the stock market.
But I also think that Tesla has a certain level of recession proofness, because buying a Tesla does cut your cost of living from an ICE vehicle. And I also think, and maybe you can confirm this, that your margins are probably increasing now that the supply chain issues and a lot of the commodity prices are decreasing, which can allow Tesla to lower prices to continue to sell more cars. This was a pretty good question from Ross, and a great answer from Elon, that if you've been following Tesla's reporting on their investor calls, this is something that's come up before in a different way. So the answer is not that surprising, but it's a really good answer from Elon. I think it's a pretty good question from Ross.
I think Tesla will weather what I think is an upcoming economic storm maybe better than any company.
For sure.
But apart from if I said, if a company's making bread or something, they'll probably be they're relatively recession proof compared to any company making large complex manufactured objects that are bought with debt. Tesla, I think, will do relatively better than anyone. But that doesn't. It's sort of if you're a ship in the storm, even if you have a really great ship, you're still going to get bashed by the storm. With respect to cost structure, somewhat of a lag effect. The supply chain takes there's latency in the supply chain, so the supply chain will take a bit longer to reduce costs than we'd like, because there's called 6 months of latency in the supply.
Right.
And this is something he's talked about in the past, that I think he and Zach Kirkhorn talked about in the past, that what they talked about in the past is they were raising prices in anticipation that the vehicles that they were raising prices on today, the orders today aren't going to be delivered for 6 months or 3 months. And so they have to price those vehicles based on what they expect the supply chain cost to be for that vehicle that's delivered 3 to 6 months from now, not for the vehicle that they're selling today. So that lag in the supply chain is something that Elon has talked about before and Zach Kirkhorn has talked about before. Zach Kirkhorn's the CFO of Tesla, or the master of coin.
What's been your, I guess, anecdotal view from Tesla's perspective into the end of this year on battery metals prices? And do you have a view on battery metals prices for next year as well? And any kind of commentary on how that's affected you, or any kind of strategy that Tesla's implementing to stay ahead of the battery metal pricing curve, if you will?
Again, I keep emphasizing like all these things need to be taken with a grain of salt, because I don't have like some.
Of course, yeah, I understand we're asking you to speculate.
Yeah, it's like if I had a perfect crystal ball, that'd be great. But I don't. But the price of battery grade lithium is obviously insane, and it's constrained primarily at the lithium refining level, much more so than at the mining level.
I thought this was a really important point. And this is why Tesla's building a lithium refinery in Corpus Christi, Texas, Port Aransas, Texas. That the lithium refinery is actually the bigger bottleneck in the lithium problem. And that lithium mining, which a lot of people thought lithium mining was a big problem, and there's been talk about at Battery Day they talked about mining lithium clays in some area, some land in Nevada. We haven't heard anything about that since. It sounds like, I think he's being pretty clear. Refining is a challenge. He talked about it in the past. He's encouraging entrepreneurs to start up lithium refineries. So Tesla's got their lithium refinery underway, and he'll talk about that a little bit more.
And that's why Tesla's building a lithium refinery in Corpus Christi is really to get out away from that choke point of, or diminish the lithium refining choke point. Like lithium is extremely common. It's everywhere, basically. It's not like oil. Like oil is much more localized and rarer than lithium. Lithium is basically everywhere.
Elon, on that facility you guys are looking to erect in Corpus, I've done a lot of work on lithium refining and processing, and I mean, typically those facilities, even with optimal CapEx, are taking a minimum of 7 years to get to maximum. So are you guys looking at a shorter timeline? Have you guys kind of broken that mold?
Yeah, I mean, 7 years is insane. No, I mean maybe we're deluded, but we're aiming to be have meaningful volume out of that refinery in like 2 years.
So that's just another important detail. Number one, that typical for Tesla, normal people in an industry take 7 years to get something done. Tesla's going to get it done in 2 years. And just to be clear, Elon is saying meaningful volume out of the Corpus Christi lithium refining facility in 2 years. So we're in late 2022 now. So by the end of 2024 into 2025, we're going to see meaningful volume of battery grade lithium coming out of that refinery. And they're going to talk about the cathode. He's going to talk about the cathode facility at Giga Texas soon, the cathode refining facility soon.
And is that the only project you guys have considered so far, or is there? And I know a lot of this is speculation, but just curious.
Well, we're also doing the cathode refining, but that's like pretty obvious, because it's like there's a giant building on the other side of the Giga Texas factory. That giant building is the cathode refinery that we've been building.
There's a YouTuber named Joe Tetmeyer who flies drones over Giga Texas, and he has multiple videos showing the progress of the cathode refining facility that they're building in Giga Texas, adjacent to the Giga Texas factory on the same property.
Awesome. And that's obviously for nickel-based cathodes.
This is an important point I think a lot of people didn't pick up on. That cathode facility is for nickel-based cathodes. That's for the high-density battery cells, the 4680 cells. It's almost obviously it's for the 4680 cells that they're making at Giga Texas. It may be that they need their own cathode refining facility in order to make the kind of cathode materials they need to get to the dry battery electrode that they want to get in the 4680 and get the 4680 to higher energy density. I think there's a lot going on there, but it's not iron-based cathodes. So Tesla is also going to need to produce lithium iron phosphate batteries, iron-based batteries in the United States, and that's probably coming too. And nobody asked them, well, what are you going to do about lithium iron phosphate batteries in the United States? But they're probably going to need to do that because of the Inflation Reduction Act. So My guess is that somewhere in the United States, we're going to see lithium iron phosphate, iron cathode based batteries coming soon in the United States or North America generally. So maybe that's going to happen in Mexico because there's talk about something in Mexico, or maybe it's going to happen in Canada. But I think we're going to see that soon.
So we're like, I think, taking the steps that are necessary to enable, very high volume output of vehicles, electric vehicles, and stationary battery packs, and to reduce our dependence on the supply chain. So I think we're making the smart strategic moves here.
He said to reduce our dependence on the supply chain. You always have a dependence on a supply chain. He's trying to reduce dependence on supply chains that they can't control. If they have their own lithium refining, if they have their own cathode refining, if they go further up the supply chain and they control more of that stuff, then there's less things that can get in the way of scaling to really high volumes of vehicles and really high volumes of battery storage. Which, again, Elon's saying we're going for really high volumes. They're going for really high volume. If you didn't catch this, one key message, one key takeaway from this is Tesla is going for really high volumes of vehicles and battery storage and everything else they make.
Depending on what happens with total automotive demand, or especially electric vehicle demand next year, especially in China, where they make the most number of EVs, I think we probably see some reduction in the cost of battery materials.
So Elon's predicting that the cost of battery materials is going to go down over time. That's good to see.
Elon, you mentioned earlier on the asset price conundrum, when it comes to cars and autos and homes. The same applies to companies, right? If you think about Charter, for example, it has an earnings yield of 10%, but it has a debt yield of 7%. It used to be 4%. So corporate buybacks are less attractive in this environment. Would you agree that it makes more sense to reinvest in Tesla than it does to buy back stock?
I think this is a really good question, although it really has been asked before in Elon's answer. He has explained this before. But let's go ahead.
We're applying capital at pretty close to the fastest rate that we can spend capital and not be wasteful. So we're not saying, let's not spend money on important long-term projects. Like I just mentioned, the lithium refinery and the cathode refinery, which are important for long-term, high growth. So we are making these investments, and we, I can't sort of say too much about this, but we are close to picking location for another gigafactory.
Close to picking a location for another gigafactory. So that's not just we're going to put a gigafactory at an existing location. They're identifying a new location where they're going to put a gigafactory. Now, I did a poll on it on my Twitter, but please, in the comments below, let me know where you think they're going to put a gigafactory. My poll was North America versus Asia versus Europe versus other. But let me know in the comments below, where do you think they're going to build a gigafactory? I'm still going with Osaka, but who knows? U.S., it makes sense that they would build something in the U.S. because of the Inflation Reduction Act tax credit, that they would want to scale production here. But I think Japan, being the world's third largest car market, and with the robotaxi platform vehicle coming, it would make sense that they would build a gigafactory, and they're going to start production of that vehicle in 2024. It would make sense that they start building the factory in Japan in 2023 so that it's ready for production in 2024. And Japan is a great market for a smaller vehicle.
Careful and deliberate about that. So there's a lot of good things that are happening.
I should also mention that I think there's a decent chance that Tesla will announce 2 gigafactory locations rather than just 1, or even 3 gigafactory locations rather than just 1. We'll see. Although he did say a gigafactory location, so maybe not.
We're coming into this recession, I think, in a very strong position. We don't have any debt. We've got on the order of $20 billion of cash and cash equivalents, and that's a pretty great position to be going into stormy waters with. But I think we want to make sure that let's just see how stormy are these waters. Are we talking about a mild recession, moderate recession, severe recession? We don't know yet. So I think it's not we just want to keep our powder dry and see what kind of economic environment are we going to see in 2023.
So to be clear, Tesla is not doing a stock buyback until they have a really good sense of what's going on with this recession. If it's a really severe recession, they're not doing a stock buyback because they want to hold cash to be ready for the crisis. If it turns out that the recession is looking mild, they're more likely to do a stock buyback.
The board is very open to doing a buyback, but I think it's like we just want to. It wouldn't be smart to do a buyback and then discover that the recession is like, I don't know, for argument's sake, worse than 2009. And then I'm like, that was foolish to have, used up cash reserves for a buyback in the face of a severe recession. So we just need to kind of see what is the nature of the recession, and then if it's looking like, hey, we're doing okay from a cash standpoint, and the stock price is like absurdly low, then at least my vote on the board would be to sort of do a buyback. But that's that's subject to the rest of the board's opinion as well. But my vote would be to do a buyback if once we are able to properly calibrate the scale of the recession, and just make sure that Tesla is healthy and we're not spending cash reserves and putting the company at risk.
Now, one thing he didn't say that I think he should have said, or maybe he shouldn't say, is that one of the reasons Tesla wants to have a cash pile is in the event they decide to make an acquisition. If markets really do tank, it may be that there's a mining company, for example. There's somebody that's doing something in the battery supply chain or somewhere else in the supply chain that is suddenly a real bargain to buy. And Tesla has the opportunity to buy some company at a massive discount and take that and not only that, but improve that company to be able to deliver more of what Tesla needs more efficiently and so on and so forth. It makes sense to have that cash pile ready for that. He didn't say anything about it. My guess is that Tesla is not looking at acquisitions based on the fact that he hasn't said anything about it. I think he's been asked about acquisitions before, and it doesn't sound like he wants to do any acquisitions. But you want that cash pile available for that, even if he hasn't said it.
For people like me who love Tesla and love the products, it's just, I'm really glad that Tesla got profitable when it did. Because if it had to go through this storm when it was sort of where it was in 2018 or 2019, it might not have made it through it.
Yeah.
So it's, really to tremendous credit of the management that we've gotten to this place where we're profitable and we don't have to worry about Tesla going under with this storm. You have the startups like Rivian and Lucid who are just burning cash like crazy.
Yeah.
Terrible situation for them.
Just really quick on that. They are burning a lot of cash. Rivian has a pretty big cash pile, and Lucid just raised $1.5 billion from the Saudis who paid above market prices for stock. And, I'm one of the world's biggest critics of Lucid, but they got a little bit of it. Not a lot. They still don't have anywhere near the cash pile Rivian has, and they're still burning cash like crazy, but they do have some support. Now, shareholders are getting diluted as a result of the Saudis getting more stock. If you owned a certain amount of stock, now the Saudis own more of the company than they did before, and you own less. But, at least it looks like Lucid has that backstop of the Saudis. They're sort of reaffirming that backstop, and Rivian does have a pretty good cash pile. But we'll see.
The legacy automakers, they're not in a great situation.
Correct.
Tesla's launching FSD Beta. They're doing pretty well overall. They're in a better position than pretty much any of their peers. And that's, I think, a huge credit to you and the rest of the Tesla team.
Let me tell you, the Tesla team is kicking ass. And, honestly, to use an anachronistic analogy, Tesla is firing on all cylinders. It's the actual, execution of the company is I think, outstanding. The team's doing a kick-ass job.
This is an important detail that when you listen to Ross Gerber and Gary Black talk about how Elon's not doing his job as CEO, they're giving this impression that Tesla's not doing a good job. That if Elon's not there, then things aren't going well at Tesla. And Elon's pointing out, hey, things are going great at Tesla. Their execution's going extremely well. When they talk down about Elon's behavior as if this is a problem for Tesla, you get the impression there's a problem in the company. And there isn't a problem in the company. The company's doing extremely well. Drew Baglino's doing a great job. Lars Moravi's doing a great job. Tom Zhu's doing a great job. Ashok Alaswami's doing a great job. The autopilot team's doing a great job. The manufacturing team's doing a great job. The sales and service team's doing a great job. There's all kinds of great things happening in Tesla. And when you listen to Gary and Ross, you think the company's falling apart. They'll say, like Gary will say, well, I'm hearing from other people that they're worried. Of course, these people are imaginary. And why would you bring it up if you don't think it's true? And why wouldn't you just tell the people that's obviously not true? Tesla's going great. Instead, he's bringing it up like there's a problem when there isn't a problem. They're manufacturing the problem.
Warren Buffett's got a lot of great sayings. I suspect Warren Buffett's going to be buying a lot of stock next year. Because if a company has like very strong fundamentals, but then the market is doing some short-term panic situation, obviously that's the right time to buy stock.
So I think Elon's predicting that Warren Buffett's going to be buying Tesla stock soon, sometime in 2023 anyway. I think sounds to me like Elon thinks the markets are going to continue to decline as the recession gets worse. So don't expect a quick jump up. I think there's a chance that Tesla stock's going to jump up after the selling pressure's off from the margin buyers. But you've got this other problem. You got this recession coming on, and now Elon's saying we're going to lower prices to deal with demand. So we'll see.
Like I stand by my prediction that Tesla will be the most valuable company in the world. I'm actually pretty confident that will be the case. But I just can't predict with accuracy the stock price between now and then.
And that's the point. We can't make short-term stock price predictions. You can't predict these movements. It's a random walk. It's going to go wherever it's going to go. And Elon can't predict it, and I can't predict it. And if Gary Black and Russ Gerber and anybody else tells you they can predict short-term stock price movements, they're either lying to themselves or they're lying to you. Because it's something you can't do. You can't know what's going to happen in the short run. You can have a really good sense, like Elon does, of the long term. This is where Tesla, the company, is going. You can see that marketplace, the competitive marketplace. You can see what you're doing is in terms of manufacturing and all these things that you're working on. You can see that future coming, and you can predict where that's going to lead to the value of your company. And you can predict that eventually the stock market will catch up to the value of your company, or at least get close. But you can't predict this short-term stuff because it just goes all over the place.
On the Twitter X Tesla crossover, and we're all power users of Twitter. Stock Market News, Stock Talk, and I have been using it for years. We've been hosting like 40 hours of spaces a week. There was a lot of hope that when the acquisition happened, that this could be a real synergy for Tesla, right? Who notoriously doesn't spend money on marketing and now has access to this incredible community. But of course, there's been work that has to go into Twitter. There's been a lot of restructuring there. Are there active synergies that you see or ways that you see these crossing over in the coming months or years to really supplement each other?
I mean, I and Tesla have long used Twitter, frankly, for free to advertise Tesla. Like my account and the Tesla account have been incredibly effective in building awareness of Tesla and actually driving demand.
Now, that was a critical point there that I think a lot of people are going to miss. Elon is saying that their use of Twitter, Elon's account and Tesla account, and there's more than one Tesla account, but I think he means the main Tesla account, they've actually driven demand. So my guess is that he actually has evidence that their tweets are working and they're affecting consumer perceptions, that they are actually making a dent. And the thing is, like, the idea that you have these random ideas out there and that's damaging the brand, that's probably not true. But if you repeat your message with frequency, and Tesla's repeating the safety message with frequency, and Tesla's repeating the efficiency message with frequency, and they're repeating self-drive. There's a lot of messages that Tesla's repeating with frequency through their account and through Elon's account, and that's getting seen by a lot of people over and over again, and that helps build the brand. So temporary, like, oh, Elon's doing blah blah blah, and the idea that that's brand damage, it has to be repeated, it has to be sustained, it has to be consistent, and we haven't really seen that. And of course, media has been attacking Elon and Tesla for years. So that has been repeated, but it's not particularly consistent. It doesn't necessarily have a good theme. They don't really know what they're doing. And anyway, it happens anyway. So, but it'd be curious to see if somebody ever pressured Elon or got Elon to answer the question, how do you measure the effectiveness of this? It'd be interesting to see if they actually have measured that, and they probably have.
I think there probably are some synergies there where, Twitter can be helpful, perhaps even more helpful to Tesla.
Hey, Elon, is there a way to connect our Tesla profiles to our Twitter profiles and get it in the car?
Yeah, I think we could.
Yeah, I think Twitter should be like the social graph of Tesla. Like, I want to go in my nav system and say, okay, I want to meet up with Ross. So, navigate us to this restaurant. We can see each other's location, that kind of thing.
And I can see all the other Tesla owners driving around me that want their visibility shared, and we could communicate through Twitter as the app.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I mean, it would kind of make sense to have a Twitter app on Tesla.
Yeah, we could listen to Spaces while we're supercharging. I was just supercharging actually like a half an hour ago, and you just sit there. It's like perfect.
So interesting idea there, having the Twitter app on your car. Seems like a no-brainer. It's kind of surprising that Elon acted like he never thought of that before. My guess is he probably had thought of that before. Maybe not, but that seems like a no-brainer. You would put the Twitter app on the car, and then how you use the Twitter app. Like, are you actually going to like tell people to show where you are? I don't know how many people are going to do that. Are you actually going to interact with people that way? Maybe not, but certainly in a supercharger, being able to use the Twitter app. I mean, I just use it on my phone. I don't know that I need it on the car, but who knows? Maybe that's useful.
Does it make sense to have someone like, David Sachs come in and help you manage Twitter? And are there like 3 candidates that you think would be really interesting to support you so that through this recession, the focus can be more on Tesla?
Like, do people listen? Elon said he hasn't missed an important meeting. Tesla's executing. They're doing great. They're firing on all cylinders. Why do you think he needs to be freed up from his work at Twitter in order to put time into Tesla? Like, were you listening earlier? This is so annoying.
Tesla just fundamentally is a far more complex beast than Twitter. So the things that are necessary to operate Twitter are just it's far fewer. It's a subset of Tesla complexity. Obviously, like Twitter is like it's got there's it's servers and software and phone apps and stuff, and it's at scale and stuff, but it is obviously it's the complexity is more than an order of magnitude lower than Tesla's.
If you think about it, Twitter has a phone app. Tesla has a phone app. Twitter has computer servers. Tesla has computer servers. Twitter has software. Tesla has software. But Tesla also has manufacturing. Tesla also has operations, far-flung operations in a variety of countries, 10 times as many employees, I think more than 10 times as many employees. Teams doing this, that, the other thing, supercomputers, artificial intelligence. There's so much going on at Tesla that is so much more larger than what's going on at Twitter. So I think that's pretty obvious, but he didn't really explain, what goes on at Tesla that's more complicated, like manufacturing, R&D for more manufacturing, battery production, supply chain. Twitter doesn't really have the same kind of supply chain issues that Tesla has. There's so much more at Tesla.
My attention will be primarily on Tesla. I think I can still, improve the Twitter product because I use it a lot. In terms of guiding the product to become better and better, that's like kind of a natural thing since I have been using Twitter actively for, since 2009. It's basically not that hard to know what things need to improve and then give that direction to the team and have it, get it done. I'm not trivializing Twitter, but it's just objectively, it's like about 10, maybe 10% of the complexity of Tesla.
Music to our ears. A lot of investors are so happy to hear you say that. And I think it helps you coming on this space and talking to people.
Elon's been saying this all along, that he's involved with Tesla. He's getting work done at Tesla, that Tesla's doing great. He didn't say anything here that he didn't say before. It's just these other people who are complaining about it aren't listening. And as soon as this is over and he hasn't left Twitter, they're going to continue saying it anyway because they don't care. They've got their preconceived notions of how things work. And what's funny is at the end of this event, they bragged about how they drove the stock up because after hours trading, the stock went up. It was down the next day. After hours trading doesn't mean anything.
Launch of Tesla electricity in Texas. I'm a Texas resident as well. So, I think that's a pretty exciting additional vertical maybe for Tesla from the utility perspective. If you just wanted to comment briefly on Tesla electricity and that starting up and your guys' outlook for Tesla electricity going forward, I think that'd be great to comment on.
Sure. Well, the overarching purpose of Tesla is to accelerate the advent of sustainable energy. And there's like just really 3 pillars to sustainable energy, which is sustainable energy generation, primarily through wind and solar, and then storage of that energy, stationary battery packs, because of the intermittency of wind and solar, and then electric transport. And those are the 3 core pillars for a sustainable energy future. And we're working on all 3. And I'd say like the demand for large stationary battery packs, especially at the utility level, but also at the consumer level with Powerwall, is like quasi-infinite. Like meaning like it's assuming the economics are compelling to utilities for and so like as long as like say a Tesla battery pack is cheaper all things considered than say a natural gas peaker plant, the demand is like gigantic.
I've said this before that the demand for Tesla products in general is effectively infinite. And by effectively infinite, I mean the demand is greater than what Tesla can produce. And when it comes to the mega packs and the power walls, it's like the demand is decades. Like it's going to take Tesla, more than 10 years to start producing in sufficient volume to get to the point where they're producing enough mega packs and power walls to meet the demand that is there. Once they get manufacturing to scale and they're able to deliver them at, a really sensible price that they still make a substantial profit on, it just gets crazy. And as they get solar rolled out and they're able to deliver solar in volume, it just gets crazy. So the size of that market is insane. It's just however big you can build your megapack production, your Powerwall production, your solar production, and get that out to customers, the demand is just there. So it's just endless.
We really want to be doing 1,000 plus gigawatt hours a year of battery packs, combined stationary and vehicle, and if not 2,000.
Now that one's a little off. I'm not sure what he means there, because Battery Day they were talking about 3 terawatt hours, which is 3,000 gigawatt hours. I'm not sure why he backed it down to 2,000, 1 to 2,000. I think the plan is because 20 million vehicles a year is a terawatt hour on its own. And then I think the expectation is that Megapacks and Powerwalls together will be 2 terawatt hours in 2030. So if they are backtracking and going to 2 terawatt hours or 2,000 gigawatt hours, that is a reduction in my models for what's going to happen in 2030. And I don't think they're backtracking. I think they're still stuck on that 3 terawatt hour model, but we'll see.
You eventually need to do this like Master Plan Pod 3. The Master Plan Pod 3 is just about scale and just like people just like one shouldn't even think of things in terms of like dollars. You need to think of things in terms of tonnage, like what tonnage of battery pack is needed. Like the fundamental rate limiter for humanity becoming self-sustaining from an energy standpoint is how many gigawatt hours per year of battery pack can you make? That fundamentally sets the rate at which humanity can transition to sustainable energy. How many batteries can you make per year?
Yeah, this is, people talking dollars, but tonnage was kind of interesting. He usually talks about tonnage to orbit, but it's really about gigawatt hours or terawatt hours. That's the challenge. How many gigawatt hours of products, how many terawatt hours of batteries can you get together so that you can produce products that contain all these battery cells? And not just for Tesla, but for humanity, you need other companies like CATL and LG Chem and other people producing electric vehicles and the equivalents of megapacks and power walls. Tesla's not going to do it alone. We need others to do it too. So how can society scale that up? And Master Plan Part 3 is how does Tesla scale it up, and probably how does that help society scale it up?
At the ton, what's the tonnage? In storage terms, how many thousands of gigawatt hours per year can humanity make? That's the faster that ramps, the faster one can get to a sustainable future. And our rough back of the envelope for transitioning civilization to a fully sustainable energy economy is around 300 terawatt hours of installed capacity ish. I mean, other people may come up with different numbers, but it's not an order of magnitude higher than that, and it's not an order of magnitude lower than that.
So let's go with 300 terawatt hours. If Tesla produces 3 terawatt hours a year, it would take 100 years to get there. But at Battery Day, they talked about society producing 10 terawatt hours a year of products, or maybe it was 20 terawatt hours a year of products. If the society gets to 30 terawatt hours a year, and the goal is 300, it takes 10 years to transition to sustainable energy. So if it's 10 terawatt hours for society, it's 30 years. And look, I think what he's saying is from 2030, it'll take 30 years to transition society to sustainable energy. And if society is doing 10 terawatt hours a year, then you get to 300 terawatt hours in 30 years. Maybe you need a little bit more than that because some batteries are going to need to be recycled or whatever. But I think that gets close to what we need, and that's assuming that society doesn't then decide, hey, we want to use more energy, and then you need 400 terawatt hours.
Earl, you're up.
Okay, so Earl's going to ask Elon some woke stuff, and it's really annoying. And
Hey, thank you. Hello, Elon. Longtime shareholder, first-time caller. I've always been a rabid fan. There's a lot of people who are similar to me, probably a little more liberal, very passionate about our Teslas.
No, I'm going to just suggest, and I've had a massive argument with people on Twitter today. People insist that Earl is claiming he's an Elon Musk fan, and I've had so many arguments with people on Twitter today. Just go to Earl. It's Earl of Frunk Puppy on Twitter. Go to his profile, scroll down his tweets, look for him saying something positive about Elon Musk. Go 100 tweets down. Find it. If you can find it, please tag me WR4NYGOV on Twitter. Send it to me. I'd love to see that Earl said something positive about Elon. He's not a rabid fan. He hates Elon. He may not realize he hates Elon. Maybe there's something mental going on with Earl, but he's not a rabid fan. And the idea that so many people think he's a fan, like, well, if he was a fan, he would probably say something positive about Elon at some point. Like, well, it's okay to disagree with somebody that you're a fan of. Yeah, if sometimes you agree with him, if sometimes you say he's doing something good, you'd be a fan. If the only things you say about him are criticism of what he's doing wrong, or what you think he's doing wrong, then you're not a fan, you're a critic. You're a hater. Earl hates Elon. I don't think he realizes he hates Elon because there's something going on, but not a fan.
Over the takeover of Twitter and some of these comments, I think some of us have been feeling a little bit disenfranchised. Still big fans, still shareholders, but some of the magic is missing a little bit there. For example, I have a daughter, or a daughter, and then also a trans child.
And this is one of those things where, like, why are you bringing your personal issue into this space where people are talking about the company Tesla? And why is Earl's personal problem, his personal family, but like nobody else brought up personal family matters in this entire space, and Earl does. And I'm going to say this, like, all the people who are mad at me for bringing this up, like, why is this okay? As much as I'm like unhappy with Gary and Ross, they don't do that. This is completely inappropriate for Earl to bring this stuff up in this forum. It just makes no sense.
And they both were always very excited about our Tesla. We went and bought a Model X, and now they have mixed feelings about it. It's just like, and it's not always directly related to what you say, but kind of some of the opinions or attention you draw to things like pronouns or something like that. And it's sad for me to watch that happen. And so I've tried to speak out about that. It doesn't really go anywhere, but
it doesn't really go anywhere. Earl has 90,000 followers or so on Twitter. He has subscribers or super followers. He frequently tweets criticizing Elon, criticizing what Elon's doing at Twitter, what Elon's doing at Tesla. He frequently criticizes him to a large audience. And now he claims, well, I'm just whining to nowhere and no one's paying attention. This is completely false. Earl is minimizing the damage that he's done, just like Gary and Ross minimize the damage that they've done. And then they try to pretend like, oh, I'm just a nobody asking a question. I don't think so. But let me know, all the Earl fans, let me know in the comments below why you think I'm toxic and all that stuff. When Earl, it's so obvious that Earl is full of crap. But whatever.
I do worry also as a shareholder about, are we alienating certain people, not just extreme left people, but just kind of in the middle folks like myself that...
Earl defines himself as the middle. That the woke people who are insisting on their pronouns, that's now the middle. When you see yourself as the middle, then everybody else is extreme, right? Anybody who doesn't agree with me is extreme. So Earl has somehow defined himself to be the middle. Elon thinks he's the middle. The only thing I'll say is, I don't think I'm the middle. I think there's right, there's left, and I'm up. I'm not right or left, I'm above. You can laugh at that or get angry at me or whatever you want.
It's just added in some politics and controversy that takes away a little bit of the shine off of our Tesla. Now, I did sell my Model 3, but it was mostly because I live in Alaska. We're missing some chargers. I'm going to throw in a plug for that. But still a big fan. Like I said, still have our shares.
You're not a fan, and nobody cares. Like, Alaska has a very thin population. It's very spread out. Winter's not a great place for electric vehicles or any vehicle, frankly. It's just not a high. It's a cold hard reality. Cold hard reality should make a lot of sense in Alaska. Alaska's not going to be a priority. You have a small population. You're really spread out. It's not the ideal location for a Tesla yet because the Teslas aren't there yet. Maybe when Cybertruck rolls out, it'll be better for Alaska. But there's much larger states with much larger populations that Tesla has to pay more attention to. Just because you're up there whining, Earl, doesn't make it make sense.
I still love driving our Teslas around, but I was just wondering if you've thought about that at all as you're, taking on this big Twitter job.
I'm not going to sort of suppress my views just to boost the stock price. Something like that's I'm not going to do it. So
there you go. Okay. I'm not going to suppress my views just to boost the stock price. Earl got a shot, and Elon gave him a very short answer. I'm not going to suppress my views. And now Ross is going to jump in and explain things for Earl. Because, see, Earl can't explain things himself. So Earl can't defend himself, so people have to criticize me for criticizing Earl, because Earl's not apparently capable of handling himself and protecting himself. He needs other people to protect him. And now Ross has to step in and explain, well, what Earl meant was, Earl couldn't speak for himself, Ross? Why didn't you let Earl respond? Earl, did you want to explain further? But Ross has to jump in because Ross is Ross.
I think that's what he's saying, though, Elon. I think when you own a media property, there's this perception of independence that's expected from the owner. And the Wall Street Journal is owned by Rupert Murdoch, but he doesn't write the opinion pieces, even though we know it's his opinion.
Ross is wrong, as usual. Earl started this bashing of Elon before the Twitter thing ever happened, right? Earl's complaint predates the whole Twitter thing. Elon made comments about pronouns like a year ago, and Earl has been on a rampage bashing Elon ever since. So Ross steps in. What he meant was, no, Ross, that's not what he meant. Because if that's what he meant, then he wouldn't have started before Elon started talking about acquiring Twitter.
So I think, it sort of like throws people off that the owner has an opinion. Now, I don't think your opinions are extreme, but a lot of people in the media take what you say, and by the time the customers read it, it's not what you said at all. I just think there's this big perception gap being driven on beliefs that aren't even yours, really, because you're saying something, and I just think that part of it, it's almost like a trap that it's like a lose-lose trap. And I hate seeing people get caught in that.
I mean, Elon, you don't hate trans people, do you? Or what are your views on that?
No, of course not. I mean, I'm not in general a hater of anyone, frankly. But I think that there's the thing that it does bother me that people will use pronouns to be super judgmental. And actually, to me, it feels like a lot of these things are just they're a shield that allow people to be assholes. They're like a moral shield it just gives them an excuse to be an asshole, and that's what bothers me.
Boy, it's really good that Ross stepped in to clean this up. Ross stepped in like Elon gave an answer to Earl's question, could have moved on, but Ross had a poke and Ross had a prod. Is that the answer you wanted, Ross? Is that what you were hoping for? I loved it. I thought it was great. I don't think it's going to make Earl happy. I don't think it's going to make the trans community happy. I'm pretty sure we already know it didn't make the trans community happy. So good job, Ross. You're really helping.
So
yeah, I get that. But I think what happens real easily in the media is it just appears that you're punching down to a really marginalized group. My kid is just trying to have their pronoun used in school and stuff, and it's then you have this really rich popular person crapping on pronouns, but it gets mixed up, and it's I think the people that you're talking about, it gets mixed up, and then people just see it as a more broader thing that you're being negative towards trans people.
It seems to me, Earl, that Elon just called you an asshole, and you haven't figured it out yet. You think he's talking about other people. No, he's talking about you. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Elon isn't talking about Earl. but I think he is. And he's not just talking about Earl. He's talking about a class of people who think pronouns are some special thing, whatever. Are you happy with, are you really glad you asked that question? Do you really think you made things better? Do you really think you clarified things? Did you get the results you wanted by asking that? Was this really relevant to this Twitter space in the first place? No.
Let's move on to this.
Yeah,
Move on to the next
Yeah,
conversation.
we got Gary and Chuck with hands up. I got just a simple question, Elon, because there's been a lot of this use of polls on Twitter. And as somebody, again, we're Twitter power users. We love that idea that we can have the opportunity to participate in major decisions that are going to affect us, right? Like my entire income comes from Twitter. With that being said, there's been a couple different ways around the polls. There's been thoughts, are the polls being used to root out bots? There's been polls that are, of course, you've abided by. There's been a tweet that polls would maybe just be available to Twitter Blue users. I'm kind of curious if there's any clarity you can give on, are these major decisions going to be made by polls? Can those polls be trusted? Do you have systems to get rid of potential botting? And then will those polls be available to everybody or just to Twitter Blue users?
This was a good question, and I think the answer is kind of fun. Check it out.
I mean, maybe it could be, open to Twitter verified or all. The challenge with all is that it's like ridiculously cheap to to buy like a bot army. It's like less than a penny a bot. Like for not that much money, you could have 10,000 or 100,000 bots all participate in a poll and shift the direction of a poll. Now, the interest in shifting, like it depends on how motivated is someone to use a bot army to shift a poll. And then often you'll see like basically what appear to be almost certainly warring bot armies, where two sides are both have bot armies, and they're trying to push a vote one way or the other. So I think in order to have a vote that it does not have a lot of bots and trolls, I think you would have to restrict it to verified users. Otherwise, obviously, it's just too cheap to scam the system.
Elon, is there an easy way to kick out bots like intraday? Like a reCAPTCHA is a basic. I'm not an engineer by trade, but something like that, like intraday, kick everyone out, have them log back in, use a reCAPTCHA or something like that, and just push these bots off the platform over time.
There's an interesting question. A great answer. A CAPTCHA is when there's something on the computer screen that says that's trying to get you to do something to show that you're human, like click the squares that have buses in them or type this text that you see. And Elon's answer is spectacular.
Bot is maybe not necessarily the right word. Like there's degrees. There's a purely automated situation, which where CAPTCHA would have some value. AI, readily available AI is getting to the point where it's certainly going to get to the point where it's better than humans at reading a CAPTCHA, not worse. The value of a CAPTCHA is just diminishing over time. Then there's the situation where they're not actually bots. They're people, but like somebody's got like a warehouse somewhere where there's like 10,000 phones. You've got like 100 people, or for argument's sake, 100 people each operating 100 phones. So that's not a bot, and they can all perform the CAPTCHA. So there's a whole bunch of that going on. In fact, you can see pictures of that on the internet. You could Google it. There's not like some easy way to get around this. It's really difficult. That's why I use bots and trolls. It's like bots are cheap, but trolls are also pretty cheap. Like a troll farm. You really, to have a high quality poll, you have to have some verification, and that verification has to increase the cost, the effective cost of having a bot or troll, by an order of magnitude or more.
So I thought that was a pretty good answer that covers that. I'm not going to go more into that, but just I think coming up really quick is Chuck Cook with his question about FSD.
Like, so if it costs like let's say a penny for a troll vote, now if that's instead they're paying like $8 or $10, now you've increased the effective cost by 10,000, or sorry, by 1,000, I should say, roughly. So that makes it much harder to scam. I guess my parting words were like, there's stormy weather ahead, but then it's going to be sunshine thereafter.
Right? When's the 11 coming? What's your best guess?
Hopefully before the end of the year. I mean, we're on V11.2, with the limited beta. So it's probably like, I don't know, 11.3. It's pretty soon. It's not like far away. It's measured in single digit, like, sort of in the roughly.
Nice. That's exciting. Well,
Yeah,
the existing version's amazing. It's been driving me around with no takeovers most of the time.
Like the thing about the B11 is there are a bunch of neural nets that are architecturally much better than 1069, but they like they've got much more room to improve. Autopilot has been going through like a series of local maximums, and so when you exit a local maximum, you first go down before you go up, and so the neural net architecture in B11 is actually much better, but it just takes time to hone the details. It's like, I mean, it's rare for me to intervene at this point when I drive around. It's like, so it's surprising to like the vast majority of trips that I take on autopilot are zero intervention.
This is something I see a lot with Elon and Omar is they talk about having zero intervention drives. And I have a lot of good drives with my Model X in FSD beta, but zero intervention drives are actually pretty rare for me. Zero safety intervention drives are pretty common. The car almost never puts me in a situation where I think it's going to cause a crash, but I have this spot where it always makes a right turn instead of a left turn. It's not aggressive enough. Doesn't, it waits too long to make a turn, causing a problem for the car behind you. It won't make the lane change you need to make. There's a lot of little things that, like, in terms of, there's like annoyance interventions. But safety interventions are basically zero. So I think, it's unclear what they mean by zero interventions. Like if you're just patient and you let the car drive slowly and it doesn't do some things you'd like it to do, then I suppose, yeah. But I think for most people, I can't speak for everyone. And maybe it drives better in other places. And I still have issues with suicide lanes. I think there's still spots where it needs to be better. The point about improved neural nets in version 11, that's something that they're constantly working on. I don't fully understand what Elon talks about, both what he just said and what he's going to say coming up in his response to Chuck Cook, how he talks about improving neural nets and how that makes things better. I don't claim to understand what it means, and I'm hoping James Down is going to explain it soon. But I think that's a real positive, and I think we're going to get constantly updated neural nets that's going to improve, and it's sort of a generalizable solution instead, and that's going to come up next.
Chuck, do you have anything to say before he goes?
Hey, Elon, thanks for making yourself available. I was just going to say, first of all, thank you for working on hard problems and hard problems such as the unprotected left turn. Do you think that many of the hard problems are going to need that much effort? Do you think it's going to generalize across, the space? I know V11 is a good example of that. I'm just curious if you think that they're going to have to put that much effort towards a lot of these corner cases, or if that was just a good example of how to put engineers to work to create a solution both in the simulator and in real life.
If you're not familiar with Chuck Cook, he's best known for his famous left turn. He's the top left up here on the graphic. Chuck lives in Jacksonville, Florida, and he has this particular left turn across a median. And Tesla put a lot of work into sending testers out and re-engineering how FSD Beta worked to handle that particular challenging problem. It seems loosely related to my problem with suicide lanes. Chuck's problem is a well-defined median where there's a median that's blocked off and then it's not drivable, and then there's an area where you can sort of pull into the median. You're making a left turn, you can pull into the middle area and then go on, or cars that are making a left turn from the main roadway can pull into the median to make the left turn. They solved that problem mostly, and it took a lot of work to figure out how to re-engineer the neural nets to do that. And there's other problems that are similarly challenging that might be different. And I think it's a great question from Chuck. Is this going to take this much work for everything? And Elon's answers are really good.
Every new neural net architecture is more generalized than the last time. So it actually ends up solving not just extended unprotected lefts, but it ends up solving a whole bunch of things. With each major rev, there's more and more generalization of solving what is effectively the real world AI problem. And Tesla is, as far as I can tell, overwhelmingly the best at real world AI. And our rate of progress is increasing.
I think that's hard to wrap your head around. the idea is that what they're trying to do is they're trying to get this AI system to understand the real world, to really get an understanding of what's happening around it, what is the space that it's navigating. And the sense is if it gets a better general understanding of the world around it, then these specific challenges become easier. And like for me, it's hard to wrap my head around exactly what does he mean by that. How do we understand the real world around us? And I almost like, are there analogies, or can we look at like other humans? Are there humans who don't have the same grasp of the real world, and so things are more difficult for them to learn? I don't claim to get that. I think the key point is he gets it. I think James Dama would say he gets it, that Tesla is way ahead of everyone else because they have millions of vehicles collecting data. They have massive supercomputer clusters that are processing and training the computers on that data. They have a great team that's figuring out how to train on that data. And nobody else has the fleet to be able to generate the data. Nobody else has the same size supercomputer cluster. Nobody's really working on the problem in the same way that Tesla's working on it. And I think that's and they're accelerating. So Dojo is going to accelerate things. The volume of data that's being generated is accelerating things. But it's all driven by, do you have enough data? The more data you have, the more you have to learn from, and the more compute you have, the more supercomputer power that you have, the more ability you have to train larger neural nets, train faster, and apparently train to more general levels. But again, like we're stretching the limits of my comprehension, so I don't want to claim I get it. And keep your eyes out for James Dowma trying to explain this and see if you understand it. I'm not sure we will, but I think this is great stuff, and I think it's a really good sign for Tesla going forward. And real world AI isn't just for the cars and for driving. Real world AI is also for bot. It might be for drones. There's potentially a lot of applications where real world AI will make a big difference in ways that we don't quite grasp yet. And there's this challenge of, at some point, does having a good grip on real world AI combined with maybe language models that Tesla's probably going to start working with, maybe using Twitter data to get closer to artificial general intelligence, which creates a whole host of potential problems. But I would rather have Elon in charge of that than Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg or whoever else is out there, or the Chinese running TikTok, right? I'm more comfortable with Elon getting there first than anyone else. And I think that's part of the reason that this is so important to him is, if the wrong people develop AGI first, then we might have an apocalypse. If the right people develop AGI first, it might lead to paradise or close to paradise. Yes, it looks like we're in for rough seas as investors, watching our portfolios flatten, shrink, or whatever over the next year or so as we're heading into a recession and high interest rates affecting companies like Tesla. I do think the biggest thing we're going to see in the next year is the devastating hit to gasoline car companies. You look at it and you say, okay, well, Tesla's going to get $7,500 discount on its cars from this tax credit in the United States. Ford and General Motors and Volkswagen and Toyota are not going to get that for their gas cars. And if Tesla's going to say, you know what, if we have to, we're going to lower prices and we're going to go from 30% profit margins to 15% profit margins, then a Tesla that's currently competitive against the BMW 5 Series is suddenly really competitive against the Toyota Highlander. It's just like all these gas cars that are out there, all of a sudden it just becomes so much more obvious that buying a Tesla is better than them. And Tesla's still profitable in that circumstance. And the Toyotas and Volkswagens and Fords and GMs are losing more and more sales. And it's not just Tesla anymore because anybody is making an EV. So Rivian's going to cut into pickup truck sales. And once Tesla rolls out Cybertruck, they're going to cut into pickup truck sales. And Ford is going to sell F-150 Lightnings and get a discount on it maybe, but that's going to cut into gas Ford trucks, and they lose money on the F-150 Lightning, where they make money on the gas ones. So there's a lot of pressure on the internal combustion engine car companies that's going to get really heavy in the next year. And I think we may be seeing some internal combustion engine car company bankruptcies in the next year. Then we'll see whether governments bail them out and whether the bailouts actually help them compete. Probably not. Any bailout will probably make them less competitive because of the strings that'll be attached. Meanwhile, Tesla's just going to keep growing. They're going to grow volumes at the risk of cutting profit margins because you grab market share when you can. And because having that fleet allows you to, number one, generate data for FSD, and number two, when something happens that FSD reaches a certain level and FSD beta becomes FSD and becomes level 4 and the take rate jumps, the more cars you have on the road, the more profit you make when people switch it on. When people say, yes, I want it. And let's say it goes to $20,000 a car and you've got 2 million cars on the road that don't have it yet. And 2 million cars pay $20,000. It's $40 billion in revenue and profit when that switch occurs. Tesla only has $80 billion in revenue this year, roughly. So $40 billion of profit will happen in a fairly short window once you crack level 4. That's ballpark. I think we may see like a $40 billion, and it could also be people sign up for subscriptions, and then you look at what's that subscription revenue going forward, and that can be a big jump as well. That leads to like a massive revaluation of Tesla. When that happens, it sounds like Elon doesn't think we're going to hit that point in 2023 the way he's talking. Not really clear. Sometimes he's very optimistic about the development of FSD. It's hard to know when it's going to cross that threshold to where people are all of a sudden the take rate jumps from 10% to 50%. Because that's what's going to be the big switch. But the more cars you have on the road, the more you get out of that when it does happen. So Tesla is basically planning for future revenue and profits from vehicles they make now rather than from current revenue and profits they make from vehicles now. And that's a really smart move. So please check out the t-shirts at elonbits.com. This is a really appropriate t-shirt now because we've got the dip in there. Tesla is the next Tesla at elonbits.com. Please support me on the Locals platform, on Patreon, or as a YouTube channel member. Links in the description below. Check out my other videos. Please like this video, share, and subscribe. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and Happy New Year coming soon.